welcome back to the channel. This weekend, I got lucky. I got so lucky that on the 4th year of trying, I finally got tickets to an NFL game, and lo and behold, it's to my favourite team, the Minnesota Vikings. Hell yeah. I will be keeping an eye on the domestic rugby. I have been so far, and I will continue to. But this video, I'm going to put some footage together of the weekend ahead, of the experiences that I experience, the stadiums I see, the players I watch, and generally just try and take it all in. And it's also going to come with a bit of a larger purpose of what can rugby learn from such a spectacle as the NFL. It is their #1 sport, but as a contact sport in terms of promoting that kind of side of things, I think there's a lot of things that rugby can learn from American football. So I'm just going to try and understand the differences while drinking a lot of beers between the two sports and how we can get rugby closer to the NFL, because whether you like it or not, that's going to be the future of rugby if you're going to want it to grow as a global sport. The NFL has got a lot of lessons to be learned for rugby in terms of how it's grown its international fan bases, how it's grown to be an international sport rather than just for America. I mean, it's such a complex game as well that I think it's a real testament to the marketing and the ability that they've had to drive the sport into other communities and cultures. And I think there's a lot that rugby can learn from it. So hopefully by the end of the video, I've got some good thoughts that aren't, too intoxicated. But if we're going to go to a Vikings game, we're going to have to look the part. Now, for a bit of context, the Vikings, before this game, were 4-0. They were undefeated. This is probably their most exciting season they've had for quite a while. And they were going up against the Jets. Now, the Jets have brought in Aaron Rodgers a year ago that was meant to be the answer to all their problems, because they've never really had a competent quarterback since I started watching the game at least. He has certainly made a difference this year. Last year, he was injured after 4 plays. And this is really exciting as well because of Aaron Rodgers used to play for the Packers, who is the Vikings' biggest rival. So the Vikings defense and a lot of the Vikings players know Aaron Rodgers quite well. So there's a lot of interesting storylines in this game. This was also played at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which I have to say, as a bit of a side, was an incredible stadium. Everything was new. The seats were very comfortable and spacious. The drinks obviously were a bit more expensive than you'd expect, but they were served quickly. There was bars everywhere. The outside of the stadium was completely glass, so it was open. You could get sunlight in. It was open view. You could see it was just an incredible stadium, as you can see from the videos and the footage that I've got here for you. I think one of the biggest things of watching this game and being at the stadium and being in the NFL is just the spectacle of everything. Players getting shout-outs and run-outs and the horn for the Vikings that they have, which, funnily enough, they probably only brought for 3 attempts of the horn straight over from Minnesota, or whether they built one in the UK, I don't know. But the reality is there's a lot to be learned here in terms of the spectacle. And I think the only team that does this from a rugby point of view is South Africa. They have the A380 flyover for their games. They build hype. They make it as a party atmosphere. And I think this is really important in terms of growing the fan base, especially I think with games like American football and rugby that are very complex sports. The way that you bring in more casual fans is doing these things that make it like a crazy spectacle. Have that flyover at the beginning. Have it like a party atmosphere. In the downtimes, have these things. And I know these are kind of cringy, some of them, but like the t-shirt guns and like the kiss cam and stuff like that. And using this downtime to just create an atmosphere where everyone is involved and it's fun for everybody. And I think this is something that rugby can learn for sure, creating a bigger spectacle around it, bringing in the more casual fans, because the way that I think you'll be creating more serious fans when they get more into it is bringing in the casual fans to start off with, and then the natural progression will come from that new fan base taking a deeper interest in the game and trying to understand it further. And I think that's what the NFL has done an excellent job of in terms of growing its international base. Americans know American football. They were brought up with it. They understand the rules, even though they're complex, because they were introduced to it as a young age. The difference here is that the reason that it's been able to grow is because it's had this great effort to grow the game in terms of the casual fan base and advertising it at the right times and creating the grandiosity. And I think that might be an American thing that they might be that has been a factor in terms of deepening that large pool of casual player base. And then that over time, I mean, they've been doing these London games for, I think, maybe 20 years, something like that. So over that 20-year period, you started off by bringing in the casual fans more, and then these develop into more serious fans. And that is a model that I think rugby union is desperate and must take in terms of bringing a newer fan base into the sport so that it can grow, so there's more money, so there's less financial issues as there are with so many teams these days. And then after the game, we found a barbecue place that had some great brisket and feasted on in true American fashion. And they even had NFL Red Zone on at the end of the day so we could just have a great evening watching the sport. So, what were my thoughts? Well, the first thought as a Vikings fan is we won the game, didn't play the best that we could have. There are definitely things for improvement. I'll probably leave the analysis to the actual game later as a little bit of an aside to myself to see what I can do. But to keep you engaged, the rugby fans that are subscribed to my channel, I just want to talk a little bit more about what I was talking about through the footage of the video and how rugby can take some lessons from American football. As I said, first lesson, casual fan base, let's grow that by greater marketing, creating a bigger spectacle, and, making it fun for everybody. That's just the first step. That's the first step into getting people more interested into a more complex game. We need to change this attitude, particularly in the UK. I think of having this as like a private school boys game that only those that are cliquey and in the know the sport and no one else is welcome. And we have there's an attitude of superiority because we play rugby and we understand rugby. That needs to get ditched. Like it's part of this old boys club that I think is definitely true in terms of the top guys of the RFU specifically. I know other countries like South Africa don't deal with this. I'm just talking about my personal experience and the attitude that I think puts a lot of people off from the game of rugby in terms of trying to understand it and watch it more. The advertising, as I said, needs to be better. I think I'm going to do a video maybe later this week or at the weekend, and I'm going to be talking about growth strategies for rugby, and this is definitely going to come into it. I'll keep the details of that and a more detailed plan of exactly what my vision is for it, keep you in a bit of suspense, but advertising needs to be better for rugby. Advertising for American football over the last few years has been superb, right? They managed to get in through to ITV and have a show on terrestrial television where they went through the highlights from there. And I think it's grown ever since then. I think it was on like after Match of the Day, maybe, I'm not sure of the timings, but they made sure that it was very available to access. American football also then grew past that point, and I think once they had like a bigger fan base and they knew that they had grown that through showing these, sometimes they show free games. I think some of the London games initially were shown on ITV as well, so it was free to watch for most people in the UK. After that point, what they did is they then really doubled down on Sky Sports. They brought in more investment. They brought in big names to come in as analysis. Started off with one of the Ryan brothers, I believe it was Rob Ryan, who's a former coach, to come in and start talking every week about it. They then dedicated a full Sky Sports channel to American football after it grew. And yeah, this is what rugby needs to learn from. At the moment, even though it's like a homegrown sport of like the UK, like it's been there for a long time, we're still watching highlights and stuff either through YouTube, which is becoming a lot more popular, or if you watch it on TV, it's not very convenient to watch. It's on TNT Sports, it's on 5:30 on a Sunday afternoon. So not only do you have to pay for the service, it's also at a spot where people may not necessarily all be there watching TV together. Whereas maybe Saturday evening when Match of the Day is on, I'm not saying this they want to do the same slot, I'm just saying there's better opportunities for putting it onto TV. Now, as I said, for the sick part of me that wants to secretly also have a second channel about American football analysis, what do I think of the game? Minnesota Vikings. Wow, I mean, it's impressive that we're 5-0 at this point, but I think we're a little bit lucky to get away with a win today. Aaron Jones, there was definitely a huge amount of emphasis on him on the run, and as soon as he disappeared, there was no other real runner to kind of take up his place. And I think the Vikings have gotten into a bit of a habit of when they get to these big leads, they take their foot off the gas and they don't just go for more points. I think you could see this just before the second half began, just before the first half ended, just after the 2-minute warning where we got the ball back for a punt. And this is a perfect opportunity to be aggressive, go down the field and at least get 3 to 7 points, because then you can have a opportunity for a swing at the half time because you have possession there, and we would have had possession in the second half. Instead, we play it safe, We go for a couple of run plays, timeouts are just by the New York Jets. The New York Jets ultimately then get the ball back and they go down for a score. So I think that was a problem with the Vikings last week against the Packers. Even though we were up big, we were tending to try and play less aggressively, force the run to try and run the clock down, and it plays into the opposition's hands. I think in American football, these days in the NFL, you got to stay aggressive. I don't think sitting on a lead is ever going to work. Defenses are different than they were 20 years ago. It's very difficult to shut out a team for 0 points because prevent defenses these days with zone coverages can get picked apart, and you kind of have to stay risky as a defense to stop points from being scored. That comes with the cost that every now and again, a quarterback that's decent is going to recognize the space. He's going to see where it is, and the points are going to be there. But if you play prevent, you're giving yourself, the opposition, too many opportunities to pass it to somebody, make completions, and make their way down the field in quite quick fashion. And I think this is where the Vikings are maybe need a little bit of improvement. They need to just keep the hammer down. I mean, look at the Washington Commanders yesterday, right? They never took the foot off the accelerator. They were still whipping it with Jaden Daniels all over the place and also running for first downs and risking it all. We're not so keen to do that. And I think that needs to change if we want to be taken seriously as a contender. I think if we did that, if we kept going for it, I mean, some of the passes were working, stuff like that, against what was probably the best pass defense that the Vikings have played. They need to just keep hammering down on that and just keep the gas pedal going. We've got the team for it. I think we certainly have the quarterback for it, although there's a lot of questions of, is Sam Darnold good enough to be that franchise starter? I think when we've given him the keys to the kingdom, especially at the beginning of games and the first 2 games, he's shown he's more than adequate to do it. Every now and again, he has a bit of a brain fart and he just throws an interception and you're thinking, where'd that go? But the negative of that is cancelled out if you just let him rip, basically, because of the amount of positives that you can gain over that period of time. On the Jets side of the ball, man, I think Aaron Rodgers needs some help, doesn't he? I mean, we watched the game, those of us that did, and I think looking at it, you're not seeing anybody on this offense that he has chemistry with yet. They're all starting to just kind of like get there with understanding how Rodgers wants to run the defense. But I really think that if they don't trade for Davante Adams, then we could be looking at a team that is good but not great. And I think part of the Jets' problem as well is that they've been bad for so long that they thought having a good quarterback would take them to the promised land, to the opportunity to win a Super Bowl. And I think a lot of people think that. But the problem is there is like 2 or 3 steps from where they were before to where they want to be in terms of a Super Bowl and winning it, right? You get the quarterback and then you have to have team chemistry, people making special plays every week that's not just the quarterback, great coaching, and I think there's 2 or 3 of those things that just aren't quite there for the Jets at the moment. So it's not a finished product. We're still early in the season. It's not great seeing Aaron Rodgers getting turfed around and crawling on the floor when he's injured at age 40. He needs some more help back there. I think they need to trade for Davante Adams, and if they have someone with some great chemistry, it will take all the attention of the defense away from all the other players to focus on Adams, and that will probably give you more space for Garrett Wilson, Tyler Conklin, who's a former Viking, who I rate. He's obviously not the best tight end in the league, but he's good. Breece Hall, and they'll probably have an ability to go all the way if they manage to bring him in, because it's just that instant connection of Davante Adams will just understand what Rodgers wants to do. So anyway, that's it for me, and I'll leave you with this photo that we got with Boba Jet. This guy was funny. He seemed like a classic New Yorker, really, personal guy. He was raising money for a charity. I will put a link to his socials down here. I couldn't find the link to the charity itself, but maybe he'll post it at some point in time. I believe it was to do with leukemia, so I know that I don't have a huge following, but, it's a good cause. So maybe stick with his channel, see if it comes up. And I'll see you in the next one.